If you're wondering why it took me a week to finally make this video and finally talk about all of the drama that has been going on in Formula 1, unfortunately on the Sunday of the Hungarian Grand Prix and then especially on the Monday when everything just kicked off, I lost my voice. I've even got a cup of tea down there, even now. So as you might be able to hear, I'm still not back to 100%, but I'm good enough so that I can finally, talk about all of the drama that has been going on. But just my luck. I mean, the 1 week where I lose my voice, and also especially on the Monday, everything in Formula 1 kicks off. So yeah, sorry that I have been a bit MIA on the YouTube channel. For all of you that follow me on Instagram and Twitter, you'll know that that's kind of where I was able to get all of the crazy thoughts out of my mind and all of my opinions out of my mind as well. That was kind of the platforms that I was using. So yes, but I'm back on YouTube where I love to be. So yeah, again, not 100%, but good enough to talk about the craziness that has been going on. I've also got a few notes down here in terms of the timeline because I am going to try and go through it as kind of a timeline and give my thoughts on kind of the individual kind of things that have been happening, because so much has happened that I think we might actually forget how much has happened in just a week's time in Formula 1. But yes, let's get into all of the Alpine, Alonso, Piastri, McLaren, Ricciardo craziness. And beginning, of course, actually with, the 1st of August and that shock announcement, Fernando Alonso will be going to Aston Martin in 2023. Now, even just the way that was announced was kind of peculiar in terms of Alpine actually weren't ready. And what was quite interesting is that it was the day after, on the 2nd of August, because even though the Formula 1 season kind of hits a bit of a pause, obviously we go into the summer break, there is still a tyre test at Hungary after the Grand Prix on the couple of days after the race. So all of the teams were there, all of the journalists were there, and so Otmar was actually, asked about this whole Alonso going to Aston Martin and how it kind of came out of nowhere. And he said to the media, and he said to a few journalists that Fernando Alonso did not give him any indication that he was going to leave. In fact, on the contrary, over the weekend after, Sebastian Vettel announced his retirement on the Thursday before the race, Fernando said, yeah, I'm just still negotiating, I'm going to re-sign, I'm staying where I am. And so it definitely came as a bit of a shock to Otmar Szafnauer and definitely the Alpine team, because the first time that they found out about it is exactly when we found out about it. So yeah, make of that what you will. And as far as Fernando Alonso to Aston Martin, I didn't like the move when it was announced on the Monday, and now kind of with what we know, I like it a little bit more, but I'm still very, very hesitant about it. Whichever way you want to look at it, in the short term, it is a move down the grid for Fernando Alonso. He clearly still feels that he's got something to offer in Formula 1, and Aston Martin very clearly feel that they still want Fernando Alonso. They still need a driver of his caliber after the departure of Sebastian Vettel. Now, as far as the Lawrence Stroll and Fernando Alonso side, they clearly have a little bit of history, they know each other, and there were some rumors even in 2021 that potentially Lawrence Stroll actually wanted Fernando Alonso maybe instead of Sebastian Vettel, so there's a bit of history there. Now, what was quite interesting is that, we know that now with Alpine that they were not willing to give Alonso a 2-year deal on his side. The only thing that they were willing to give him is a 1+1, in the sense that they would give him the 2023 deal, and then for 2024, it would be on the team's side to re-sign him. And Fernando didn't want that because he didn't want to be a seat warmer for Oscar Piastri. He wanted to have the full focus of the team to get the job done around him, the full support of the team, without kind of one eye on, who's going to actually replace this guy? Is he still going to be here next year? And I totally understand that, because especially with where Fernando Alonso is right now in his career, clearly he's still driving very well. I'm not going to talk too much about his age. He's 41, whatever. I think something that Mark Hughes from the race said on a recent podcast of theirs is that age is irrelevant. It's all about motivation. You can have the youngest driver, a 23-year-old, a 22-year-old with, maybe 20 seasons potentially in Formula 1, but if they're not quick enough and if they don't have the right motivation, or if they're not as motivated as Fernando Alonso, it doesn't matter how young you are. You could put an 18-year-old in there, and if they're not quicker than Fernando Alonso, then what does that matter? So yeah, as far as Fernando Alonso's age, whatever. It clearly was not a problem for Aston Martin, and certainly on their side, I totally understand why they would go for Fernando Alonso. I think it's a great pickup for them. I totally understand. He kind of brings that gravitas to the Aston Martin brand. So yeah, he's going to pick up exactly where Sebastian Vettel left off. And the one thing that Lawrence Stroll knows is that with Fernando Alonso, even as he is driving right now in 2022, whatever that 2023 Aston Martin is capable of, he is going to get the maximum out of it. He is going to show the entire team exactly where that package is. And up against, Lance Stroll, I mean, Fernando Alonso, he's going to have his way with Lance, let's be brutally honest. Even kind of in that first season, I fully expect Fernando to be well on top of Lance Stroll, especially in the races. So it's a comfortable position for Fernando Alonso. It's a decent it's going to be an interesting dynamic, I think, between Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso. So yeah, look forward to that. So from the Aston Martin side, I totally understand it. The only thing that I don't quite like is that with a two-time world champion and another big name, just like Sebastian Vettel, that brings about expectations, that brings about immediate pressure. And with the season that Aston Martin have had, and actually the past couple of seasons, I'm not sure that they still need all of those big expectations. I really did think that someone like, my shout, actually, if you saw my previous video with Tomo, actually, we both kind of said that Pierre Gasly we thought was the perfect option. He's a good enough driver to where he'll really get some good results out of that car. He won't upset the balance. And because he's not such a big name and an ex-world champion, the expectations would just be kind of tapered a little bit, which I thought is exactly what Aston Martin need. But alas, clearly Lawrence Stroll thought not. But anyway, again, for Aston Martin, totally makes sense. It's a really good kind of hire, a really good kind of a pinch in terms of getting Fernando Alonso away from Alpine. I even think that in terms of a driving level, they've kind of almost weakened one of their potential rivals, but it all depends, of course, on what kind of car they can give him in 2023. It's easy to look at this move now and think that, it doesn't look great. Obviously, it's a move down the grid, and it is, and I still don't like it, to be brutally honest with you, but clearly Fernando Alonso feels that it is the right place for him to go in terms of having the trust of the team around him, and that's what he didn't feel like he had at Alpine, especially during this negotiation phase. I mean, that's why he also put out that hilarious video on his story as well, when all of the Alpine and Oscar Piastri madness was kicking off, but we'll get to that in just a second. However, from the Fernando Alonso side, I don't get it as much. Again, Aston Martin, fully get it, great signing, they've got a solid future. Lance and Fernando, he has got a 3-year deal there. I believe it's a 2+1, so 2 guaranteed years, and then that third year, I believe, might be on the team or him. I forget which one it is now, but yeah, he's got potentially 3 years there, so he's got a long-term deal, easy teammate, a team with loads of potential, and again, it's not about where they're going to be next year, it's where they're going to be in 3 years' time. However, for Fernando Alonso, I do think that this is a big risk, and especially when it comes to Fernando and the career choices that he's made. I mean, to be fair, in a way, it's not like his career legacy is going to get any worse. I mean, I don't think he's going to, I don't think it's going to get any worse, to be brutally honest. It can't be a worse move than when he went from Ferrari to McLaren Honda. That was kind of his big punt at the beginning of the hybrid era. He thought, right, manufacturer team, McLaren, they were winning races only a few years ago. Honda, I mean, they're going to bring in so much money, so much resource, and it's all going to come together. It might take a bit of time, but it's all going to come together, and I'm going to be there to capitalize. And it was a horrible move. We all know how it went. And Aston Martin ultimately, at the moment from the Alonso side, is still going to be a big risk. Now, for me, the really big risk actually is not necessarily if the car's good or bad, because Fernando Alonso is going to get the most out of it. And again, I don't think like his legacy is going to take a massive, hit because of it. Again, the McLaren Honda thing kind of wrote the rest of his career, if we're being brutally honest, and he's kind of still recovering and still driving at a very high level, still entertaining, still kind of, getting and having these moments of magic, which I'm sure we're still going to see even when he's in the Aston Martin. But how the whole Fernando Alonso and Lawrence Stroll aspect is going to work, how those two are going to, be, and their dynamic within the team is going to be massive, because that's the star driver and the owner of the team. And the thing about Fernando Alonso is that with him, you get an amazing racing driver, someone who's going to maximize the package, whatever car you give him, but you also get noise. You get a lot of noise, you get a lot of attention. I mean, this year at Alpine, Esteban Ocon is doing a great job. I think he's having probably the best season of his career. And apart from the past week with all of the drama, I don't think we've heard a single thing about Esteban Ocon and the fact that, he's doing such a good job. It's all been about Fernando Alonso and the kind of moments of magic, and also the bad luck that he's had, and where potentially he could be, had the team kind of been better in terms of reliability, in terms of their organization, in terms of their strategy, and if he didn't have moments of bad luck. So even when Fernando Alonso up against Esteban Ocon is still not being talked about that much, and that's the Fernando Alonso effect. That's what you get when you sign a star driver. And my worry is if the car is not good, and say it's exactly, maybe even worse, where, what about if they build the worst car of the grid? I know that this is kind of, the worst scenario, but how is Fernando Alonso going to react to that? How is he going to support the team? Is he going to still kind of stay motivated? How are him and Lawrence Stroll going to interact, and what's going to come out of the team then? Is it going to be good for the team also? So it's just little Fernando Alonso things. With every single driver, doesn't matter who it is, I don't care what your favorite driver is, it comes with positives and negatives, and Fernando Alonso is the same. So yeah, as far as Aston Martin, I think it's for them, it's great. For Fernando Alonso, I still don't like it 100%, but again, I suppose he would say that not only is he earning a lot more money than Alpine, and that's a totally understandable thing. We all want to be paid for what we believe we are, we are valued in terms of what we contribute to the team. So totally understand him wanting more money. But yeah, we're gonna have to judge this, I think, in the next 2-3 years, and if it is a hit in the short term, then ultimately that's just the risk that this move carries. But the way it was announced was quite interesting, because I think it was very telling. We know now that in 2022 there's been these big negotiations, and I do have to say, actually, from the outset, because I've seen obviously a lot of things on the internet, in terms of Alpine, it's not Otmar Zafnauer that negotiates the driver contracts. He is the team principal, he runs the team on the ground, and he is the guy in charge in terms of actually getting the results and getting the most out of the team, the car, and the drivers. That's his job. In terms of who negotiates the contracts, it is Laurent Rossi, who is the CEO of Alpine. So it's not like Otmar, doesn't have a say in what he wants from the drivers, or, if he wants this driver to stay or go. I'm sure he will give his say, but it is Laurent Rossi, the CEO of Alpine, that actually negotiates with the drivers. So it's just important, I think, to note that. And we've known that in 2022, Fernando Alonso wants a longer term contract. He wants 2 years. He feels that his performances, again, kind of taking the bad luck and, the really some poor strategical decisions, I think, by the team as well, taking his performances, again, forget his age, forget any other driver, taking his performances into account, he believes that he deserves a 2-year contract. And the big sticking point with Alpine is that they thought they had Oscar Piastri in the background, kind of waiting and ready to kind of jump in. So the only thing that they were comfortable with giving Fernando is a 1+1 deal. So still a 2-year deal, but the first year is guaranteed, but the second would be on the team's side, which is not a long-term contract. That's a 2-year deal, with the one being, or the last year being on the team side, and that's not what Fernando wanted. And to be honest, I don't blame him. I think I think he warranted that kind of deal, but Alpine were in a very tricky situation where I feel like Laurent Rossi actually outplayed his hand. I think that Laurent Rossi honestly felt like, I've got 3 drivers, technically, Ocon is signed for a long-term deal, which in itself I think was a mistake, but that's a conversation for another video. And then I also have a great young talent in Oscar Piastri, and I have a Fernando Alonso who's performing really well right now. And to be brutally honest, I think what happened between the negotiations is that I think Rossi he pretended to have this massive leverage of Oscar Piastri being ready to sign. He's outside the door, Fernando. If you don't take this 1+1 deal, I have got Oscar Piastri outside that door ready to sign today. I think that's the sort of leverage that he was holding over Fernando Alonso's head. And Fernando Alonso, I think, I just thought, right, if I'm not being fully supported by the company, if I'm not being fully supported by the team, then what's the point of me doing a year? I know that I've got the talent to go more than a year, so yeah, ultimately, if I'm coming up against the brick wall and this guy really has this massive leverage over my head, if I'm going to sign Oscar Piastri today, I'm out. And that's why I feel like he signed for Aston Martin, and also the way it was released as well. Like, he clearly blindsided Alpine because he wasn't happy that, in a weird way, he was kind of being blackmailed a little bit. What we know now is that they did not have Oscar Piastri contracted and ready to go for 2023. So the leverage that Laurent Rossi was holding over Fernando Alonso's head it wasn't even real leverage. Like, they didn't have a contract with Oscar Piastri that was concrete. So that's then how the rest of the story played out. So even though it's not a good look by Fernando Alonso in terms of he clearly wanted to send a message by blindsiding Alpine and everyone at the team and just announcing it with Aston Martin whenever he wanted, I kind of get it because they messed him around. They messed him around. They didn't clearly tell him that we don't actually have Oscar Piastri kind of ready to go. You know, we're still going to have to negotiate with him, but we still want you to do, you know, the 1+1 deal because we're not quite sure if you're going to be good enough in 2 years' time. So yeah, Fernando Alonso did not feel the support of the team. He didn't feel support of the organization. And that's why he wanted to go to a team that would give him a 3-year deal where he would be the #1 driver, the full support of the actual owner of the team as well. So even though it didn't quite look, you know, even though it's not a great look, and again, it is a bit of a passive-aggressive move by Fernando Alonso, I totally understand it. If someone's messing you around, you don't just stay there. So yeah, he clearly didn't feel trust in the team and he decided to go. So that was just August the 1st, you know, that was the crazy announcement of Fernando Alonso and all of us sitting there going, what is going on? I mean, how has this just happened? But then all of us are waiting for this, you know, Oscar Piastri announcement. You know, Laurent Rossi, you've got Piastri apparently, you know, ready to go for 2023, so let's hear it. And then, of course, came the 2nd of August, the Tuesday. This is how quickly, you know, all of these things were happening. The team announced that they are, you know, that they confirmed that Oscar Piastri was going to be driving for them in 2023, stepping up from the reserve role at the team that he has now to a full race drive and making his Formula 1 debut for Alpine in 2023. Now, they made that announcement, but immediately there were a few red flags, let's just say. Number one was the timing of it. Obviously, it was kind of it was announced on a European time zone. It also wasn't announced, if I remember, like on the hour. I think it was like 21 minutes or 19 minutes past the hour, which, again, if you've got a planned statement, like I think the Aston Martin one was like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. Like it was at a proper time, so even on a European time scale. So yeah, even that was a bit strange that it was kind of just like sent out. To me, that wasn't a really big thing in terms of the Australian time. A lot of people said that, oh, you know, it's the middle of the night in Australia, but potentially if some of their sponsors, you know, are in Europe, I kind of understood it. Also, the Formula 1 media, they work on a European time zone. So yeah, I kind of understood it, although I put it in the back of my mind like, you know, it's a bit weird. The other thing was that there was no driver quote. You know, Oscar Piastri making his Formula 1 debut. Every young kid, every young racer's dream to make their Formula 1 debut, and actually for a very good team looking at where they are now, and there is not a single word from Oscar Piastri. And on top of that, there isn't even a retweet or anything from Oscar Piastri's account. So yeah, there was just some red flags. I mean, yeah, we saw the, you know, Formula 1 kind of still announced it on their official social media pages. Formula 2 also put out some stuff again, you know, congratulating Oscar Piastri. But yeah, there was just a bit of silence from the guy that has actually just been announced to make his Formula 1 debut, which was a bit weird. And this is where everything truly kicked off, because then Oscar Piastri, only a few hours later, put out a absolute blockbuster tweet, to say the least, that basically sent the entire world into meltdown. First of all, it was absolutely quality, the way it was worded, in terms of the fact that he basically just flat out said that he didn't have a contract agreement with Alpine for 2023. But my biggest takeaway, and I actually said this on Twitter, my biggest takeaway from that infamous now tweet is that he flat out said, I will not be racing for Alpine in 2023. That was my biggest takeaway, because there could have been a world where Alpine just kind of jumped the gun a little bit. They thought that Oscar would sign everything, and, you know, everything, they just wanted to get it out, basically, and they'll sort the contract. You know, it's kind of bad negotiating and, you know, really bad practice by the actual team itself, but, you know, that sort of negligence. Now we know a little bit more about Alpine, so maybe we should expect it. But maybe they just put out that tweet and, you know, they knew kind of Oscar, he would sign. We just need to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's. But ultimately, they didn't have a contract, and on top of that, Oscar just said, I am not racing for them, full stop. So it isn't even a case of them kind of jumping the gun and they'll kind of get the contract sorted and everything will kind of be official behind the scenes and no one needs to know. Oscar Piastri straight up said that, I have not signed anything, I am not going to sign anything for the future anyway, and I am not racing for this team next year. Now, the balls to come out and say that you're not going to race when you haven't even actually done a free practice one session. You haven't done a single race, a single qualifying session, not even a single practice session. You haven't made your debut, and to have the balls to come out and say, I am not going to race for this team, which is actually a pretty good team in Formula 1. I mean, it's not as if he's been sent to Williams or something. But yeah, to come out and straight up say that had to come from the management, and it was clearly very carefully worded as well. Now, what's quite interesting is that Alpine still actually kept up that original tweet, so they planted their flag, and subsequent quotes from Otmar Zafnauer also said that they do believe that they have a contract with Oscar Piastri for 2023. So how that plays out, we're still going to have to wait and see. But in terms of the Alpine side, I think the way they handled all of this is absolutely terrible. I don't know how you can go from having 3 top quality drivers, maybe 2 top quality drivers and 1 young talent who could be absolutely phenomenal, and lose 2 of those drivers in the space of less than 48 hours. I think it's terrible by the team, and it clearly shows that the team, in a way, is not quite kind of organized well enough. You can't lose Fernando Alonso. You can't mess Fernando Alonso around with this massive kind of leverage of having Oscar Piastri, and then realizing when Fernando Alonso does decide to call your bluff, that you actually don't have a contract with Oscar Piastri that is concrete for 2023. He is their reserve driver, but clearly there isn't exactly a signed and sealed kind of contract where he is going to drive for them next year. Now, whether or not he still does, and whether or not, potentially if he doesn't get into McLaren, that can still be saved, I don't know, we're going to find out. But in terms of the Oscar Piastri side, I thought this was also a very risky move, and it's a weird one. Obviously, he's managed by Mark Webber, and there's a lot going on here in terms of Fernando Alonso and Mark Webber. They used to be boys back in the day. I'm sure they still are. So maybe a bit of communication between Fernando Alonso and Oscar Piastri's manager. And there's also a bit of a relationship, and quite a big relationship actually, between Mark Webber and Andreas Seidel, because between 2014 and 2016, Mark Webber actually raced for Porsche in their endurance championship, and guess who was the team principal at the time? Andreas Seidel. So there's a lot of contacts and there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, but yeah, did Mark Webber kind of, hint to Fernando, a few little things? Are there talks going on between Mark Webber and Andreas Seidel? We don't know, but I'm sure there are. I'm sure Mark Webber has Seidel's number saved pretty firmly. So yeah, I'm sure those things are going on behind the scenes, but I think it was it's a big risk, let's be honest, because there's clearly nothing at the moment that's totally concrete also between Piastri and McLaren, and to put out a statement that just straight up kind of breaks the relationship between Piastri and the team that kind of has been building him up and kind of funding his junior career and helping him kind of get test days as well in some of their older cars, to break a relationship like that with Alpine, it's risky. It's risky by Oscar Piastri, and I said on Twitter that they better be 100% sure, concrete, that Oscar Piastri does have something lined up with McLaren in 2023, because there is a scenario where Oscar Piastri doesn't actually have anything lined up for 2023 with McLaren, and maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe kind of, the deals kind of reach a few road bumps, especially with Daniel Ricciardo, who we're going to talk about in a minute. And potentially, if Alpine actually don't want Oscar Piastri, or potentially if they get someone else, there is a scenario, somewhere where Oscar Piastri doesn't have any seat for 2023. And that would be nuts. So as much as I appreciate, Oscar Piastri potentially looking for his options and thinking that potentially McLaren, if they want him and if they can actually get him and sign him for 2023, if he wants to go there, that's totally fine. But it's risky. I'm just, that's what I'm going to say. It's risky. He might have something confirmed at McLaren, and, we're just going to wait for this Ricciardo thing to play out. But there's also a hell of a lot of risk to start breaking relationships with a big team like Alpine before you've even set foot in Formula 1. So yeah, how this plays out, we still don't know. Now, also actually as a little side note as well, of course, Williams on the 3rd of August, so, after the whole, Piastri and Alpine situation was happening, they also announced Alexander Albon with a contract, 100% confirmed now, for 2023. And by the way, the tweet that Alex Albon sent out, oh my god, it was absolute gold. So yeah, shout out to Alex Albon. Now, I'll talk about the whole, Albon and Williams thing in another video, but the short of it is I'm super happy for him, super deserved. I believe he's got like a 2 or 3 year deal, so that's also amazing. And yeah, I'm just really happy for Alex. I think he's proved a lot of people wrong, and he thoroughly deserves that deal at Williams, which is now kind of his own team. So yeah, super happy to see Alex for the long term in Formula 1. But then, of course, we get to kind of the most recent kind of real news on the 5th of August, which is when McLaren officially told the media, as I kind of understand it, that they are now starting to negotiate with Daniel Ricciardo for a buyout of his contract. Now, the reason why there are so many unknowns and the reason why we don't have anything concrete about what does Piastri actually have with McLaren and what did Alpine think that they had with Oscar Piastri, what makes it really kind of what makes it really complicated is that in terms of the official contractual kind of party lines from McLaren is that they obviously have Lando Norris, that's not a problem. And in terms of the Daniel Ricciardo side, it's on him to be able to kind of accept a settlement and leave McLaren for 2023. So what about if Ricciardo just says no? You know, that's still technically on him. They can't, even though McLaren can kind of buy him out and kind of give him a large sum of money to buy him out of his contract, it's still on Daniel Ricciardo to say, yes, I am going to leave the team and I'm going to accept the money. But what if he doesn't? You know, what happens to Piastri in that situation? So this is where all of this has just got so messy and so complicated. And even, you know, as we sit here now, kind of a week after Fernando Alonso made his announcement, we still don't know where everyone's going to be for 2023. Had to grab another little sip there. So that is where we are right now in terms of what we know. It's still kind of interesting because we don't know who's going to be in that Alpine for 2023. We don't even know if Daniel Ricciardo, is it going to be Ricciardo, is it going to be Piastri? I think in terms of the Ricciardo side and what it means for his career, I am going to save that for a different video because I do think Ricciardo is going to leave because, I mean, the team clearly don't want him. The team clearly are trying to push him out with a $20 million check, no doubt. So, yeah, it's very difficult to kind of... it's very difficult to refuse that, so we'll see kind of when that gets announced. Will it happen before Spa? Will it happen in the second half of the season? I can't wait for the Belgian Grand Prix and all of the press conferences. That is going to be box office. However, in terms of who looks worst and who comes out worst, it has to be Alpine. It is an embarrassing situation. The way they negotiated clearly with Fernando Alonso, holding this Oscar Piastri leverage over his head that he's ready to sign the moment you don't accept this 1+1 deal, and then they fumbled Oscar Piastri. It's unbelievable negligence by them. Ultimately, also Fernando Alonso also loses out because he is moving down the grid. Aston Martin is a big risk, but if a team is maybe not blackmailing you, but again, like holding this leverage and not supporting you all the way, then what does that mean for on track as well? If you're not supported by the organization, then it just kind of saps confidence and, saps your motivation to stay there and give your best. So I totally understand why Fernando Alonso left. I still don't really like the Aston Martin move because him and Lawrence Stroll, that's a grenade ready to be exploded if they don't give him a good package next year. But again, that's for Drive to Survive, and that situation, regardless, is going to be box office. But yeah, that's going to be for 2023. We're going to find out who's going to be where. Once again, we don't know who's going to be where, but definitely it's going to be entertaining to find out. Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Daniel Ricciardo, Alpine, McLaren, all of this drama, I absolutely love it, and I can't wait to see how it's all going to shake out. Anyway, there you have it, a bit of a longer video. I feel like you guys deserve it. This, again, was more of a podcast kind of video because I just needed to kind of talk through everything that I've missed out. Yeah, still frustrating to kind of not be back at 100%, but I am getting a little bit better. I have so much amazing content coming up, so yeah, it was just frustrating to kind of lose my voice, just as all of this was kicking off. But yeah, I've got some awesome videos lined up for you guys as I get better. Let me know your thoughts in the comments box below. Who's going to be where, who's going to be racing where, and who potentially might get left out in 2023. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments box below. And if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to drop it a like and smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.